Hello, I am an old fart, and I have a guilty pleasure. I like knives. You're looking at one of a series of videos where I'm giving a friendly tour of some of the knives in my collection. I'm not an official representative of anything or an expert. I just like knives. Today we're going to look at this little knife. This is a Benchmade knives, model 485, known as the Valet. So a Benchmade Valet. A couple of weeks ago, I reviewed with you this little Benchmade knife, the Megumi, and said that, it really hits some interesting marks in being really tiny. So being so small and non-threatening that it had the potential to be a really good gentleman's knife. But if you recall, what I ended up saying is it is just so small, there's a lot of compromises in being so small, and it ended up being a little bit sort of flimsy and insecure. I think, and it's discontinued, so you can't have one. I think this is Benchmade's attempt to do another sort of small gentleman's knife, but overcome those problems with it being small and flimsy. I have no knowledge that that's officially their plan, but it just seems similar to the Megumi, but slightly larger and much sturdier. It went with the full classic axis lock design, so it is certainly sturdy and secure as much as any other knife. It wasn't an easy knife to find. They're listed in the Benchmark website, but the retailers that I have access to didn't have them in stock, but eventually was able to get one. So formally, it's the model 485 Valet. I'm going to go a little out of my normal order here and compare its size to a few things first, because I really think that its raison d'etre is to be a small knife, possibly replacing the Megumi. So let's start by comparing it to the Megumi, the thing I think it was designed to replace. And as you can see, it's actually quite a bit larger than the Megumi. In fact, in my standard comparator for mid-size knives, it's actually the same size as a Benchmade Mini Griptilian. It just, so you realize this is actually not a small knife. It just seems small because it's very narrow. So it achieves sort of the look of smallness without actually being small. The more official size, of course, is it is about 0.92 pocket calculators. That is an internationally recognized standard. Closed, which is important for a gentleman's knife. How does it pocket? Closed, quite a bit smaller than a pocket comb. It's a 2.96-inch blade, which means just under the 3-inch limit for places that matters. So despite being essentially the same as the other mid-sized knives in the Benchmade series, it feels small because it's so narrow in this direction. So it feels small in your hand and it's light. In fact, it's so small that it feels a little bit cramped. It's really hard to get more than 3 fingers on it, and there are some issues closing it because of the small, cramped size, but it's very pocket-friendly. So it is, as we've already mentioned, a full standard axis lock knife with a double stud, thumb stud opening. You can flick it open. The mechanism supports that quite nicely. And you can also open it slowly. The nice thing about an axis lock is that the strength of the lock is not a function of how fast or hard you open it. It is with some frame locks. With some frame locks, if you open slowly, you get a very partial lock, and you have to fling it open to get a secure lock. The axis lock locks equally securely no matter how fast or slowly you open it. Now you notice I'm closing this knife two-handed. You can close it one-handed by starting it so you have to pull with both fingers to disengage the axis lock. You can start it closing and close it. And you can set the pivot tension so that it will drop shut. In fact, I had it set to drop shut. But it's a little bit cramped for safe drop shutting, and I cut myself on it quite a few times because when it starts drop shutting, it's so small that the meat of my hand is in harm's way here. And I had it drop and nick the palm of my hand several times. So I tightened it up a little bit, undropped it, if that's a verb, and I generally close it two-handed. It's one of the very few knives in my collections that I feel I have to close two-handed to be safe. It's that cramped. It is a light knife. It's 62 grams. Just by comparison, the mini griptilian is 79, so it's about 3/4 the weight of a mini griptilian. Nice blade. The blade is M390 steel, which is a wonderful steel that I like a lot. Sharpens beautifully, holds an edge well. Not easy to sharpen, but okay. I have sharpened this one on a KME system to there we are. Can you see the mirror edge? To a mirror edge, which it's holding. There's the mirror, which it's holding very nicely. Satin finished blade. Doesn't show fingerprints particularly badly because of the satin finish. I like that. And I like drop point blades, and this is a beautiful one. It's long and slim, and it looks nice. The thumb studs are removable, and I generally do remove them for easy sharpening. There's a tiny sharpening choil, so small it's not really useful for anything. It's a little too small to really give you clearance for sharpening. You still have to be careful, and it's certainly too small for choking up on the blade. So just a design feature, I would say. The body of the knife is a little bit uninspiring. It's G10 scales. They're gray. And can I get the light to show? There we are. There's a sort of a faux wood grain pattern pressed into the scales. So in the right light, there you go. You can see this grain pattern through there. It has full steel liners, and they are bored out. There, I think you can see in there. They are bored out for weight reduction. So it's quite sturdy, yet light. Pocket clip is quite handsome. Polished steel. It's a deep carry clip, which I appreciate. I like deep carry clips. And it's reversible. See, there's mounting holes here, so you can set it for right or left-hand carry, but tip up only. With an axis lock, there's really no way to get a clip on this end. There's just too much complicated stuff going on in there. It does have a lanyard hole. I added this fob on purpose this time, not as a decoration, but to give a little more length to the grippable area of the knife, because it really is small, and that makes it feel more secure. How about being ambidextrous? Well, I'd say, yeah, 95%. I mean, being a double stud axis lock knife, you can see the full clearance has been milled into both sides. So it is fully ambidextrous in terms of its operating mechanism. I said only 95% just because of one thing. If we look at the the clip side, these scale screws have Torx holes on this side. So does the pivot screw. On this side, they're domed. So that the two sides don't look quite the same. Now, I haven't tried it, but I imagine those screws are all reversible. So you could flip them around and have the presentation side of the screws on this side. But I haven't checked that. However, this screw, for some reason, is one-sided. So there's a Torx hole there, and there is no dome here. That screw is mounting into the frame. So I'm going to give it 95% for ambidextrous. If you flipped everything that you could around to the other side, you'd end up with this Torx hole on your presentation side. So I don't know how you could live with that, but maybe you could. It's manufactured in the United States, if you care about that kind of thing. I think all Benchmades are. Not sure about that. So let's go through some likes and dislikes. What I like. I like this thin, streamlined look. I think that it's quite an elegant looking knife. I like the fact that with an axis lock, in theory, you're out of harm's way when you begin the unlocking mechanism. Now, that really only works in your favor on a knife that you can safely drop shut. On this one, it's so cramped that I find I usually have to get myself back in harm's way. So that's not a big advantage, but I'll still list it as a good thing. And I love the blade. I like M390 steel a lot. I like the look of the blade, the nice slim drop point. I like the fairly understated printing on the blade, just steel on this side and logo on this side. So I think the blade is quite attractive. What I don't like, I've really already mentioned the two things. One is that it is so slim that it's cramped. It's actually rather awkward to open because there just isn't a lot of meat available there to get your hand firmly on the body. So my old arthritic fingers have to bend more than they like to grip the body. And then it'll open okay. It's awkward closing. It's so small and cramped that I've cut myself several times closing it, and I've formed the habit of closing this knife two-handed. And the G10 scales are just not attractive. They're slippery. They look and feel like plastic. And I'm actually kind of surprised by that. A knife that they're calling the Valet is clearly aimed for the classy gentleman's knife market, and I would have thought that fancier scales would at least be an option, and they aren't as far as I can tell. So anyway, speaking of gentlemen's knives, let's run through my internationally recognized knife rating system. First, my NT-GK rating, non-threatening gentleman's knife. For non-threatening, I'm going to give it an A+. It can be opened slowly, and that's important. Knives that can only be flicked open scare people. And for extra nervous people, you can open it two hands, which really removes any fear that it may be interpreted as a switchblade. And it has simple and sleek lines. It looks quite decorative. It doesn't have any silly tactical decorations or shaping, so it does not look like it was designed to be a weapon. So for non-threatening, A+. As a gentleman's knife, the good is the deep carry clip is nice. It carries deeply, hence the name. And it's smooth, so it is easy on the pocket. However, on the bad side, as a gentleman's knife, the G10 scales are boring. I would certainly like better material. None of my gentleman's fashion accessories are made out of plain gray plastic. Imagine having a Mont Blanc pen with the body made out of that sort of Bic stick pen blue plastic, right? It's just incongruous. So A++ G+, I'm going to give it just an A as a NT-GK. Next, how about the KN rating, my rating for my knife nerd friends? Well, the pros are it has good steel and a nice flickable mechanism. The cons, I think the fact that it is a little cramped to operate, and particularly I always feel a little bit unsafe closing it. Plus the boring gray plastic scales pull it down. I'm going to give it just a B as a knife nerd, a KN rating. And finally, my CMR, cut myself rating. Well, as I said, I have cut myself on this not once or twice, but several times learning to close it, especially when I had it set for drop shutting. I had little scars all over this part of my hand from the blade falling on. I think you can still see one there. So I'm going to give it a B- as a cut myself rating. They were not, serious wounds, and they weren't design faults, but it's an easy knife to cut yourself on. So, summary. This is a nice, non-threatening gentleman's knife for everyday use. It's office safe, very non-threatening. It's a full function access lock, so you're not sacrificing any sturdiness or lock safety to get it small. But it's cramped. Now that's by design. They designed a small knife, and so it's small. Duh. A little aside, I notice I'm not carrying this knife as much as I used to. And I think that's the pandemic effect. As I record this, we're right in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm working from home most of the time. This knife is great for carrying to an office. It makes some compromises in order to be small and non-threatening. So it'd be a great knife to carry to an office. but I'm not going to the office. And so those compromises suddenly matter more than the office friendliness. So I'm just not carrying it because I don't need the office friendly. I think I confirmed that by noticing that I'm carrying my larger, not for the office knives much more often than I used to, because there's nobody around to scare. So, and that's too bad, because the small pocket-friendly knives are, in theory, better for my loosely supported pockets of my sweatpants, but there it is. Anyway, I expect it will get used a lot again once the lockdowns end and I am once again traveling to an office rather often. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again. Bye-bye.